Hey, how's it going? So this was just kind of like a brainstorming thought that I've had. Just on the drive back from school. I'm feeling a little sick. I've just been driving by. Coming back from my class. I'm back at home now. But I was thinking that this would actually make for a pretty cool video because I haven't heard anybody talk about this. That is Christianity in the Conan the Barbarian movie, because for something that's just meant to be so classical sword and sorcery, and something that's taking place in a very pagan style, like a very pagan world, very pagan universe, it's really fascinating just to see how much Christianity has just been melded into this film. And I personally think that because I think that it is very Christian because it's a big part of like mythology. I mean, it's probably one of the greatest mythologies of all time if you're really thinking about it in the right way. But also, I kind of wonder if the director was like either very Christian himself, or maybe leaned towards that way, or maybe was even just more inspired by it to get those really legendary moments in there. But I just kind of wanted to talk about that today. So, starting off, Conan himself has a lot of Christian influence within the film. The most obvious part is when he's like crucified. But even more than that, when he's crucified, he also he actually dies, right? And when Valeria is basically sacrificing herself to protect him and fighting off the demons, you could also consider that like him spending days in like a Hades type of situation, in like a sort of hell where he's fighting demons and evil spirits to come back to life. Well, more specifically, Valeria, in which case she would be the kind of Christ figure in that moment, or maybe like a John the Baptist type of figure. But not only that, but like even beforehand, he's accused. He's accused by I'm blanking out his name. Thulsa Doom. Yeah, he's accused by him, sentenced by him, and of course he has a lot of serpent imagery, and so the serpent imagery, the temptations, the mind magic that he uses to manipulate and form a cult, which is primarily focused on conquering and murdering, especially one's family, and it's very demonic. It's a very demonic character himself, and so you kind of see this devil figure condemning what's now become a Christ figure. I mean, he's wearing the white robes that are tainted in blood. I mean, he's beaten, battered to a pulp. It almost kind of looks like he was whipped, which by the way, Christ himself was whipped, lashed in the back, to the point of being near death, right? And so you kind of see the same thing from Conan, and then he's crucified, and it's interesting, he's the birds, the vultures, they try to consume him. Fascinating, they try to consume him, right? Because that almost kind of reads as like a communion type thing. And you can also see that communion with Conan also eating the vulture itself. It's a very barbaric display, and it's meant to show, he's standing up to death. He's fighting in the face of death. He's conquering death, which, again, very Christ-like image there, right? Because with Christ's resurrection, he's defeated death through his own death. And that's the kind of symbology there. And it's not only with Conan as well. we also get Valeria. Like I said, like she kind of goes through Hades and awakens Conan. In that way, she's almost like a Mary archetype, especially with the serpent jewel, because the serpent jewel, it looks like an egg. It looks like a pinkish red egg, and it all just reads as like fertility, because it reads a lot like, you know, the womb and fertility and life. And you can see a lot of that in her. Not necessarily like obviously fertility, like, you know, she's not giving birth to many kids, but you know, there's a sex scene with Conan, which, you know, I mean, sex is inherently a fertile thing. You know, it's a lot of fertility, it's a lot of, you know, rejuvenation. It's babies, it's making babies, and also just like her vitality and her virality and her kind of like her self-will, which is eventually placed on Conan, as represented with her dying and Conan taking the jewel and wrapping it around himself, which is a really fascinating concept there. And Subotai, he's definitely like an apostle, right? I mean, he's kind of out there starving, and Conan comes to him, sort of rescues him from where he was, and, you know, they start adventuring together. And I'm not sure, you know, there's not really a specific apostle, I don't think. I would have said maybe like Paul or one of the Johns. Yeah, actually, he probably would be. He might actually be closest to the Apostle John, the one that stayed with Mary. I don't know. I haven't read up, so I'm not sure. Because I could have sworn there were two Apostle Johns, but I don't think that's correct. But yeah, the Apostle John, the apostle that stayed with Mary and took her home and was considered like a half-brother to Christ, or like a cousin to Jesus. He stays with Mary and takes her home, and that's also kind of similar with him staying with Valeria throughout most of the story, even when Conan's delving out into the no man's land, the outside world, you know, taking it into himself. That can also be kind of considered like a death and delving into Hades. You know, it's his first real noble call to action. You know, because there's that temptation with Valeria, almost acting like an Eve at that point, where she's like, just take the money and go. This is too dangerous a mission. You know, I don't want to die. Which, I mean, reasonable, completely reasonable. If it were me, I would have been like, yeah, we might as well just keep these jewels and stuff. But Conan is different. Conan disappears overnight. Disappears with, you know, disappears from Valeria, from Subotai, and he leaves his medallion. I'm pretty sure, yeah, he left something for Valeria, and it almost represents his death in a way, to where he's like disappearing into Hades. You know, he's disappearing into this no man's land, into this home of the cult and stuff like that. And it's very fascinating. And, you know, there's also like the Crom too can kind of fit into like a Christian perspective in certain points, like when Conan gets the Atlantis sword, it's pretty heavily insinuated that the person that he accidentally bows down to, because remember, he's crawling down, he's making the fire, and he's kind of like in this prostrated pose before this throne, and so there's that kind of like that symbolization of like he's bowing down to his god, he's bowing down to Crom, but but it's not exactly a very Crom-like character, because I mean, sure, the king or the whoever's sitting on the throne is, they're underground, they're kind of under the mountain in a way, but he's gifted a sword, and that kind of is like a Crom thing, I guess, but usually the gist with Crom is that, like, you don't really get anything from him by him being, the god. Instead, it's more so like, he's already given, everything that mankind needs to conquer the world. But this isn't the case. He is gifted the sword, the Atlantis sword, the sword that eventually represents his own self-actualization, and it's a very, and a sword is a very Christian symbol in a way, because it's just kind of shaped like a cross, and the whole idea of the sword is stabbing it into the enemy, and when your enemy is the serpent, this great deceiver, this silver-tongued demon of a person, then that sword becomes a very holy image, a very Christian image. And so, all in all, it's just really fascinating. I probably haven't even delved into all of it. I'm not saying that Conan the Barbarian from 1983 as a whole is Christian. I'm just saying that there's so much Christianity within it. It's just really fascinating, and I haven't heard anybody talk about this. So thank you guys very much for hearing me talk about this, hearing me discuss about this, and I hope you enjoyed it and found it a really fascinating topic, because I definitely have. So thank you very much, and have a good night.